Has your child with autism or signs of autism been kicked out of preschool or daycare or held back? Today, we are talking about 3 steps parents can take when that happens. Hi there, I'm Dr. Mary Barbera, and today I'm going to cover a topic that actually happens a lot more than I even imagined. Hearing that your toddler has been kicked out of daycare or expelled from a preschool program for any reason, for behavior problems, usually, this can feel devastating. Unfortunately, this is a common experience for families of children with autism or early signs of ADHD. In fact, expulsion from preschool happens at a much higher rate than kids in kindergarten through 12th grade. And children with developmental delays and disorders are at most risk. I know how it feels because I lived it myself. When my son Lucas, who's now 29 years old, when Lucas was 2 years old, and not diagnosed with autism or even he wasn't even diagnosed with a speech delay at that point. He was and we enrolled him in a toddler preschooler program for 2 year olds, and it met I think 2 times a week, Tuesday and Thursday for a couple hours in the morning. I thought everything was going fine, but mid-year, his teacher and the preschool director wanted to meet with my husband and I. And even though Lucas wasn't causing any problems in the classroom, they were concerned because Lucas wasn't engaging with his peers the way he should. And they were also worried about him, Lucas, progressing to the 3 year old preschool the following year because he was a summer birthday, so he had just turned 2 and then started preschool a month later, where some of the kids were, turning 3 in the fall. And so there was a significant age difference in the class, but also because Lucas was so delayed and not really engaging or actively talking to anyone there. He had some words, but I would call them pop-out words at this point. They were also worried because progressing from the 2 year old class to the 3 year old class meant a few things. And this is very common, even though this was 25 years ago plus, even still today, potty training, which I've done a lot of work on potty training, and in a recent potty training episode, I did talk about how kids with that were delayed with potty training were really at risk for not progressing to the next daycare room or the next preschool room. So they were worried about, would Lucas at 2.5, would he be potty trained at 3? They were also worried about the staff to student ratio, which in the toddler class was 2 teachers for, I don't know how many kids there were, say there were 15. But in the 3 year old class, there was 1 teacher for 15 kids. So the staff to student ratio would get worse as well. So since Lucas was a summer birthday boy, they recommended holding Lucas back in the toddler class for another year. And this would mean he'd have the same great teacher, he would know the routine. And if he was just speech delayed or a little behind, he would catch up and he would um, be okay. But they also suggested that Lucas be evaluated because they were concerned about his development. Um, that year, in a few more months after that, Lucas was finally diagnosed with autism the day before he was 3. Looking back, and I've done a lot of writing about this, I wish I would not have gone into a deep state of denial when my first husband first mentioned the possibility of autism when Lucas was just 21 months of age. But we were trying. We had him enrolled in speech therapy by the time the preschool director talked to us. We had him going to a typical toddler preschool where he was making gains. He was sitting in circle time. And that's another point I want to make is Lucas now at 29, he still has moderate to severe autism and an intellectual disability and needs 24/7 care and at least 24/7 supervision. Um, Looking back when he was 2, he did not, quote unquote, look bad. He was dropped off. He was fine separating from me. He didn't care if kids took his toys. He would sit in circle time. He would learn the little songs a little bit. He was warm and cuddly with me. He had some language, some pop out words. I just didn't know how to get more words. I didn't know how to do all the things I know how to do now. But I did do a video blog way back is it, and the title is something like, and we can link it in the show notes, but can you tell how a 2-year-old's going to do in the long term? And the truth is, after working directly with thousands of kids, you cannot tell. So don't rest on your laurels or think that everything is going to be peachy. If your child is being held back from daycare to progress to the next room or kicked out of preschools or daycares, there are probably issues. It doesn't always mean it's autism. Sometimes it could be early signs of ADHD, which usually is not diagnosed until later. Sometimes it can be a major speech and language delay or disorder that they're just so frustrated and they don't understand what's happening. Sometimes it simply is a mismatch between a child's needs and the environment. But whatever the cause, parents everywhere are asking, why isn't my child keeping up with peers and what can I do about it? So, why do kids get kicked out of daycare or preschool? Um, and this happens, actually, there's new research that shows 1 in every 6 children with autism do get kicked out of daycare or preschool before kindergarten, 1 in every 6. So that is a lot, right? So what are the reasons? Behavior challenges, namely biting, and I've done a blog on biting. And I say in that blog that biting will get you kicked out of almost everywhere. As a registered nurse, I know how dangerous human bites are, and they have to be taken seriously. So, biting, and then other forms of aggression like hitting, grabbing, throwing objects, tantrums, excessive crying. I mean, it's normal for kids in the beginning of the year to separate and maybe have some problems with crying, but um, ongoing tantrums, not following directions, and then especially if there's any aggression or self-injurious behavior, property destruction, those are the main behavioral challenges that parents note that their kids get kicked out over. Communication delays. Frustration builds when a toddler or preschooler can't express their needs and wants. Safety concerns. If they're darting out of the classroom or away from the playground area, with a one teacher for 15 students or 2 teachers for whatever, even if it's a 1-to-1, if our kids some kids really do have a lot of safety issues. I did a podcast interview with a behavior analyst who uses angel sense to track children, and but all the safety measures you have in place, if the child is eloping from the preschool, obviously they're not going to be able to stay there. And then the other reason that kids get kicked out is lack of staff training. Many centers, even that advertise that they have daycare for autism or autism daycare, they simply don't have the tools to manage behaviors effectively. Searches like ADHD child kicked out of preschool or toddler acting out at daycare are heartbreakingly common. Um, but being removed from a program doesn't mean your child is bad or that you are a bad parent. It means the environment isn't at this point appropriate for your child to have success. It's not just your child attending and not getting kicked out either. We really need to assess all environments to see if there are if it's appropriate at all. I do have a another podcast or blog on how to tell if a school ABA program or home ABA program is better and how to know fit. Even in my book, Turn Autism Around, in the social chapter, which I believe is chapter 7, I talk about a little child who was in daycare 1 day a week just for quote unquote socialization. And this child ended up, I was just observing, and he ended up going over to a wall and licking the wall because he was so overstimulated and had so, he just wasn't getting anything out of the environment. So even if your child's not getting kicked out, if you're worried that it might be a mismatch, uh, or your child's not truly benefiting, then these are three steps you can take today to truly evaluate whether an environment is appropriate, whether your child gets kicked out and you're looking for a new environment. I think these three steps may help. So step number one is you really need to know the milestones. I always thought like I'm just the parent, quote unquote. I shouldn't have to worry about my child's milestones or, leaving it kind of too much to the doctor. But now, in this day and age, we really, as parents, need to know, not just for babies to roll over, to sit up, to crawl, to walk. Um, we also need milestones. We need to know the milestones for pointing, for instance. I've done a lot of work on pointing, and that should happen between 9 months of age to a year to 15 months, definitely by 18 months. If your child is not pointing with their index finger to show you things and for things they want, that is most likely a delay. So know the milestones, know when they should be putting two words together, know when they should be asking and answering questions and all the things that make, the milestones that are so important, parallel play versus pretend play versus following directions, sitting in circle time, eating a snack, using a napkin, drinking from an open cup. These are all things that if your child is not doing, then daycare are going to be doing checklists, and they're going to be not promoting your child to the next level of the next room if there are delays. And like I said before, just because there are some concerns that your child's not meeting these milestones doesn't mean that they have autism for sure. And it also doesn't mean that you can't do anything about it, because in addition to knowing the milestones, and you can check the CDC website for milestones for each age, you also can use my free digital assessment. It's the Barbera Early Childhood Assessment, or the BECA, BECA digital assessment. It's free, it's quick, it helps you evaluate your child in three major domains: self-care, language, and problem behavior. Um, if your child is falling short, either on their milestones or their BECA or both, um, or even if they're not, what is causing the problem behaviors at daycare or preschool or the delays? Either way, I would, step number two is to get an evaluation. Call your pediatrician's office and make a sick appointment to discuss their delays, their behavioral concerns, your milestones that they're not reaching, and the Becca scores. Um, the physician or healthcare provider may recommend early intervention. You can also go straight to early intervention system if you're in the United States. You can just say early intervention for a 2-year-old in your county and state, and you should be able to get a free or very low cost standardized testing and early intervention in your home. And step number 3, if your child is kicked out or not promoted to the next daycare class, is step 3 is you can learn how to use my 4-step child-friendly strategies at home. All of my strategies are based on my experiences as a registered nurse, as a mom to 2 sons, one who has autism, and my other son is a physician now, and based on the science of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, since I am a doctoral level board certified behavior analyst. But ABA in general remains the most proven therapy for children with autism. And my 4-step child-friendly ABA approach is great for every child I've ever worked with because it's very flexible. When people say, oh, I don't like ABA or ABA didn't work for my child, whoever was providing the ABA didn't use my child-friendly 4-step approach when they were delivering ABA. And you can learn that yourself. Don't let anyone tell you that your child is quote unquote too high functioning, too young, or it's just ADHD, or it's just a speech delay. Every child can make progress, especially when one parent takes the lead, becomes the captain of the ship, and learns how to become their child's best teacher and advocate, and how to you can learn as a parent how to use reinforcement, how to skill build at home, and how to evaluate different settings to see if it would be beneficial for your child. So how can you prevent expulsion from daycare or preschool? Number 1, partner with staff. Share strategies that work at home. Have some ability to transition your child to and from. Work with the staff in terms of reinforcement, calming routines, or techniques that you think will work. The second thing you can do to prevent your child from being kicked out, teach replacement skills. If a child is crying or whining when someone takes their toy, you can teach the child to ask for the toy back nicely or ask staff if they can intervene and set up some rules for sharing. You can request accommodations, ask if your daycare can adjust expectations, provide visual supports, allow outside specialists from early intervention perhaps, or a behavior specialist. An ABA provider may be able to go in and look at the situation, make sure it's appropriate, make sure that it is serving your child. And then you can also consider specialized programs, which are more designed to support children with developmental delays if at this point your child is not thriving in a typical preschool or daycare situation. In general, no matter where the environment is, some behavior strategies that work for many, many children, for most children, are positive reinforcement. We want to catch children being good and doing the right things and reward small steps. We can use visual schedules. Most kids, especially kids with autism, but most kids in general, and most adults are very visual learners. So we can use picture schedules for snack, playtime, circle time. We can use visual timers. The third thing you can do is use short, simple directions. Children with autism and ADHD process better with fewer words, less explanations, especially in the middle of a problem behavior. A lot of preschools and daycares have calm corners, and we would want to use those before a behavior escalates, not as a timeout procedure afterwards. If your child is going to time out frequently, that is a good indicator that the environment is probably not the best for your child at this point. And just in general, whether you're at home or school, being consistent, using the same rules and rewards will be helpful. So what if your child is already expelled? If your child's already been kicked out, you're not alone. As I said before, it's not your child's fault. It's not your fault. It's just a mismatch with right now where your child is at. Instead of just seeking out another program right away, I mean, some parents really do need daycare because otherwise they can't work. So you might have to seek out a program with more inclusion supports. You also should find out the reasons why your child was kicked out and try not to be defensive about it, because the preschool or daycare needs to protect everybody. And if it's a safety concern, they are just trying to do what's best for the whole group and the whole school. But find out what went wrong, assess the milestones, assess with the Becca, access your local early intervention and therapy services, and focus on, when you are at home with your child, building skills, preventing problem behaviors from happening at home and in the community where you can be with your child. And then hopefully the more skills they get, the better they'll function when they are away from you. Remember, expulsion does not define your child's future. It just signals that they need more support and probably a better environment at this time to thrive. So in conclusion, if your child was kicked out of daycare or preschool, or you're just worried about that environment might not be the best fit, the problem isn't your child, it's just a mismatch with their needs right now. With the right environment, positive reinforcement, consistent routines, and step-by-step skill building, children can succeed in daycare, preschool, and beyond. To learn more about what you can do today, attend my free brand new webinar where I will walk you through practical strategies to decrease problem behaviors, increase talking and communication, and give your child the best chance to thrive in all environments. Sign up today by clicking the link right below this video in the show notes, or going to marybarbera.com/workshop, and I will see you there.